following program has been approved by the National Bovine Appreciation Club.
Hello, hello.
Hit it, hit it.
Hi, and welcome to the wonderful World of Art Zone. I'm Nancy Guppy here at Georgetown Stables, and we've got lots of groovy stuff for you in the show this week. Take a look.
The expressions on each of their faces and the way it was done just seemed humorous to me, and I decided I had to buy the photo.
The art of the snapshot.
Money and the Muse, to me, are at opposite ends of the spectrum.
David Poleski nearly sells out. BenDeLaCreme curates the calendar.
Wowza, am I regretting that now?
Seattle streets now and then.
We need a touchstone. We need to know texture and depth, and it gives us a sense of place and understanding of where we came from.
And new music from Razor Clam. We'll begin with Robert E. Jackson, a Seattleite who, over 2 decades, has captured a collection that is fascinating and deeply nostalgic.
What I look for when I'm looking for a photo and try to select something is normally it has an instantaneous, it hits me right away. There's a visual punch that I get. Can I explain that punch? No. It just seems magical, or there's something about the lighting or something about the faces of the people that strike me as something I want to own. I'm Robert E. Jackson, and I collect snapshots and other vernacular photography. I have about 13,000 snapshots in my collection. I have a partiality to the double exposure. Diving photos is one of a favorite area of collecting. I like silhouette photos. I like Halloween mask photos. I have a collection of dirigible photos, a collection of people blowing gum bubbles. I just recently purchased a photo of a man looking into the mouth of a woman, and I don't even know why the photo was taken, but the expressions on each of their faces and the way it was done just seemed humorous to me, and I decided I had to buy the photo. So I have a little bit of this and that.
Okay, Robert, you might want to look at this box here. It
good.
has some of the newest arrival stuff
Right.
that I sorted off to take to the latest
Okay, I'll do that.
show that I went to.
I find photos in local photo stores here in Pioneer Square. I find them online. So one of the areas that I like is guys with glasses on. This is really wonderful. This photo here, I find them via shows that I travel to called tabletop photo shows, ephemera shows, paper shows, where photos are available. I think I like this one right here. I'm sort of, yes, a little bit addicted to it, as a lot of my fellow snapshot collectors are. You never know what you're going to see next in a snapshot, and you're sort of hungry for that next image. Okay, this is really a great photo to me. This is, I love shadow photos, and this will fit well in my collection, and it's very sharp and clear and mysterious. I sort of discovered photography about 20 years ago and found for me that collecting vernacular and snapshot photography was an inexpensive hobby and enriched my life. I retired from full-time corporate life about 8 years ago and decided to devote myself to what was then my avocation, which I guess you could say became my vocation. I was honored that about 25 of my photos were included in the first of the trilogy, the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children books. And I was fortunate to have the National Gallery of Art in DC exhibit my snapshot collection. In 2007, it was called The Art of the American Snapshot. It also then traveled to Amon Carter Museum in Fort Worth, Texas.
Swing it up, it says yes, take the shot, count it down, zip it off, hey, meet the
Bellevue Art Museum has mounted a show of my Polaroid collection. The Polaroid really came into its own in the 70s and allowed for sort of instant image gratification through the ability of the camera to pull out an image that you could hold in your hand and watch develop. And in the same time, there was privacy that was able to happen, that you could actually take a photo that did not have to go through drugstores.
My gun and my girl, oh my gosh.
The response to my museum show and other gallery shows I've had have been quite positive. People have been very interested in the material, seeing them on the walls.
When she's too beautiful for words, take a picture.
What's different today about taking photos is that it's so instant and so readily available, and is really what I call the visual wallpaper of our lives, that we really sort of aren't really taking photos anymore of our families or our friends. We're really taking photos of our lifestyle and of ourselves. And so, as I've said in the past, snapshots used to be about the we. Now it's really about the me. And it's so easy to delete things that all the fun mistakes and anomalies that you might see are gone. They don't really have the meaning, I think, that they used to. Snapshots are about memory. And in some ways, the snapshot becomes the memory. And there's a beauty to that. People want to record their lives. They want something that's a visual remembrance of what they're all about and where they came from. So there's a richness to that narrative about people's lives that is wonderful to be part of and to collect.
Polaroid's personal private painterly photographs from the collection of Robert E. Jackson runs now through March 24th, 2019 at Bellevue Arts Museum. Well, staying with our photography theme, the Seattle Times runs a Sunday column titled Now and Then, a visual and written history that documents the changing face of Seattle from its earliest days. A selection of those columns have been compiled into a beautiful hardcover book called Seattle Now and Then, The Historic 100. Here to talk all about it are the creators themselves, Seattle public historian Paul Dorpat and Mr. Jean Sherrard. Hi, you two.
Hi.
Well, congratulations on the book. It's
We're
quite
old
the
fans
accomplishment.
of yours, Nancy.
Well, and right back at you, sir.
Oh, no, not as much, though.
Okay, so first of all, for anyone who, if there's anyone who's never seen the column, and I don't believe there is in Seattle, but describe the Now and Then column kind of in a nutshell. What is it?
Well, Paul started this column 37 years ago.
Yes.
And it is now totaling more than 1,800 different representations of the city. And for the most part, he hasn't repeated any photos.
One.
Well, that's...
One.
Wow.
It's been his principle never to repeat a photo. So,
But I found out when I repeated it later on. I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, someone tells you.
But I wrote a completely different thing about it the second time.
Well-
But both were true.
Well, there you go.
Both are
There's
true.
more than one story. There's always more than one story.
That's it. And you came up with the principle. That's it.
There's always more than one
Thank
story.
you to you,
So the then photo of what something was, and then the now photo. So you had 1,800, and you had to choose 100 of those for this book. How did you? What was the process of choosing?
I have an answer for that.
Let's hear it.
Even though
I'll throw
he's
it to you,
supposed to
Paul.
be on, I asked
Yeah.
if Jean would do it on his own, which he did because he had good taste.
Yeah.
And also it gave him the opportunity to find stories that he really was excited about repeating with glorious contemporary photos, which he did.
So Seattle has changed so much. How do you take your photographs so that when the viewer is looking at the before and after images, right, side by side, that they immediately know that they're looking at the same location?
you can't.
Right.
The city's changed too much.
Yes.
There are locations that we can look across and say, oh yeah, that's there, that's there. There's the Where's Waldo moment.
Yes.
But as often as not, we find that the landscape has altered so profoundly that what we're looking at is something that Paul calls an ironic view of the city. In the book, I look across at an old tennis match from the 1890s on Capitol Hill, and what was there until last October was a McDonald's parking lot, so you could still see the view. But what's there now is the wall of a condo. So if I tried to reshoot it today, it's gone. So last October I went out and shot the construction. So I'd get that final view with the buildings rising up below it and the loss of that vista. So,
hey Paul, so 37 years of doing this, what originally sparked your interest in documenting the heritage and the history of Seattle? Why did you want to do that?
I think it in part has something to do with the suggestion of a friend of mine that the Seattle Arts Commission was giving grants to people for ideas.
Nice.
So part of it was just survival. And one of the things I got was to do a history of Seattle, which I never did.
You never did it?
No.
Well, you've been doing it now for 37 years.
I studied it a lot, you know, and sure, I built up an archive and did a lot of publishing, but I never made that
particular
film.
That particular film.
Well, I guess I did, didn't I? I made the Seattle Chronicle.
You did?
Yeah.
Do you have a particular favorite, either of you, in the column?
That's the old.
Just in the moment now.
I didn't say a word. I do.
What is it?
My favorite right now comes with a little story, and it's the shot of whom the settlers named Princess Angeline, Chief Seattle's daughter, Kiki Soblu. And there's a famous shot of her in mid-90s, 1890s, near the end of her life, looking at the photographer down what is now Post Alley. So we went back there this spring and we took along 2 subjects, and they were both direct descendants of Princess Angeline, Chief Seattle. Ken Workman, and he's like great, 4, 5 greats down, but he's direct from Seattle, and Mary Lou Slaughter, who is also another 4 greats down from Kiki Soblu. And as we took this photo, Ken turned around several times. The street was empty behind him, Post Alley was empty, and he turned around. And Clay, who was there as well, and I were watching this happen, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. It was like he'd been bitten. And finally, we asked him later, what was going on, Ken? He said, I kept feeling a pat on the elbow. And he patted me like this. As a photographer who finds that moment when I slot into place and when I actually do have the photo in my sights that was taken 100 years ago and can see it, I know about that pat. For me, it's metaphysical. There's a moment where the past is reached out and
kind of coming there. Things are kind of crossing over.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
nice.
so that's, for me, that's become one of my favorite moments in the book. And we just shot it in the spring. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Phew. Well, I never heard that said so eloquently before. Could I just borrow it?
Yes, it's yours.
Right,
you can take that one.
I'll take that one, all right.
Do you think about the photos that you've taken, the now photos, that in a future Seattleite's going to use that as a then? To compare, like another book to 100 years?
What a strong sense of irony she has.
Wow.
Do you ever think about that?
Oh, yeah, occasionally.
Yeah, because we are, too, going to become historic.
No,
never thought of that.
Already, Paul's first photos, and we were tempted to do this, is that Paul's first repeats of these old photos from 1982 and 83 and 84, it's then, and now.
Wow.
Yeah, there's one on 6th and Madison, which is repeated 4 times.
Wow.
Largely because a friend, Lawton Galley, who long since deceased, took a lot of pictures at that corner because he knew they were building the freeway.
Oh,
and also because he was a Presbyterian.
Oh, and is there a church? Oh, right. You guys, finally, what do you hope that readers will take away from your book? What would you? The legacy.
Can I start?
Well, you certainly can, and I'll just copy you.
All right. I guess what I'd say is, we live in a city that's changing more rapidly and has over the last 5 years changed so rapidly that we're losing great swaths of it. We're losing our bearings. So for me, it's actually, we need a touchstone. We need to know texture and depth, and it gives us a sense of place an understanding of where we came from.
Well, you guys, it's just a great...
Do you like it?
I do, very much so. Yeah. It's great. In fact, I'm going to buy one for my mom and dad for Christmas. I hope they're not watching. So anyway, thank you so much for coming by. Seattle Now and Then, the Historic 100 is available at local bookstores and online. Get a personally signed copy through pauldorpat.com. Also, the formal book launch happens Sunday, October 28th at the Downtown Public Library, which also happens to be Paul Dorpat's 80th birthday. Cue the cake.
Oh, wow.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. We can all sing. Happy birthday, dear Paul Dorpat. Happy birthday to you. Thanks, you guys. Thank you so much.
You guys,
you got to blow it out now.
Except isn't that the danger part of the...
No, go for it.
Just do it. Yeah, just don't,
All right, here we go.
don't do a lot of weirdness. Yes.
Okay.
Yay!
In for the assist.
He's always helping, always helping.
He's always a helper.
Yeah.
That was great, you guys. It was fabulous.
Thank you, Nancy.
You know, when your friends tell you that your work is good, that's one thing. You know, it's like your mother telling you that she's proud of you. But when strangers not only tell you that your work is good, but they actually buy it, it's a new experience. And having worked in obscurity all of these years with no recognition, it's just a kind of a reinforcement of having taken the path that I've taken.
I'd never show it before because I'm kind of shy. I've been shy about my work because it's really personal. And so I thought, well, even though I'd been encouraged by friends before to show, and here's a perfect stranger telling me that I should have a show, and she had the venue for it. I was entirely overwhelmed by the response. Hi, I'm David Poleski. Welcome to the Church of the Divine Puttering. My studio in Ballard where I paint, sculpt, and write music, play the guitar, blues and ragtime guitar. You know, when I was a kid, my mother and I used to play this game. She would have a pad of paper and a pencil, and she would draw objects in the room, and I would have to guess what they were. And there was also a show on Channel 9 when I was a kid called Learn to Draw with John Nagy.
I think you're going to find it one of the most fascinating types of boat to draw.
I needed to do something to support myself, to enable myself to be creative. Driving the school bus is an absolutely wonderful venue for a personality like mine. I didn't really ever have the notion of creating art for a living. That didn't interest me at all. In fact, money and the Muse, to me, are at opposite ends of the spectrum. The thing that really interests me in painting and creating art is a sense of narrative, a sense of mystery. If a piece has a sense of mystery about it, it invites the perceiver into the piece and arrests their attention. A painting then has presence, and then when the audience comes to it and sees it, it involves them in the piece. And then it's a dialogue. They can take that away with them and share with the rest of the world.
Thank you. Enjoy the show. Thank you for coming.
There were former teachers there, former principals of schools that I've driven to. A young woman who was a little girl, a first grader on my bus in 1993. At one point I turned and there was my brother and my sister-in-law standing there, having flown in from Alabama to be there.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
Or to know that you have something that others find value in is a really, really wonderful thing that I got to learn that I already am who I've always wanted to be. And I just...
Catch David's exhibit, Serving the Muse, now through Thursday, November 10th at Blowing Sands Gallery in beautiful Ballard.
Oh, wow, okay. She's got nothing. All right, well, I'll get the torch then. Should I just walk in?
our musical guest, the one and only Razor Clam. Hello, y'all. I'm so glad to have you here. I'm glad we actually got you on our show because it was hard working with your schedule. You have a lot going on. Yeah. So, Jeff Tapia, so nice to see you. Hi. Also with the band Rat Queen.
Correct.
You're a very, very busy girl. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce some people in the band.
Over here we have Aya on the lead vocals.
Hi, Aya.
Over there, Natasha on the keys.
Looking beautiful with that purple.
And we've got our father here, Anna on the bass. And Jessica Bierstein over there on the drums.
Hey, Jessica. Well, so nice to have all of you here. Now, I was telling you earlier that I was reading the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. They described the razor clam as an exceptionally meaty shellfish. Did that seem to
That's
resonate?
Accurate, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at us. So.
Look at you, very gravitas and presence, right? So, and also, you're as individuals and as a band, you have a mission. How would you describe that mission?
Mostly we are trying to create a safe space for people of color, marginalized groups, femmes, to be able to play music in this very male and white dominated music industry. So we really, really deliberately tried to pick band members that represent that group, and we really believe in giving those people a voice.
And so the band came together in 2017. Do you feel like you've kind of making some inroads in that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think so. I think that people are very much interested in working with us because we represent such a colorful, different kind of, scene.
Yeah, and you have also an incredibly great look, may I say. Now, of course, first and foremost, it's about the music, and I know you put out one record, and are you working on a new one?
We sure are, yeah. We're going to play one of the new songs off of that today.
Yes.
So you'll get to see that one. It's called Disaster. It'll be out soon on all platforms.
Do you know when it's coming out?
We're not quite sure yet, so you better find us on Facebook.
Exactly.
So that you can keep track of it.
Absolutely, you got to follow them.
Yeah.
So the first song is going to be Disaster. This is unreleased. Is this debuting? Have you played it before?
We've played it before.
But never on TV.
For the select few, but this is a very special audience, so we're making a little exception for you guys.
Oh, I love that. I love an exception. All right, so are you ready to do this thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hey, everybody, it is Razor Clam.
Turn the lights down, don't wanna look through the eyes, keep the TV on, don't wanna hear those eyes, you're fucking blind, and I'm wearing you out, you're fucking blind, and I'm wearing you.
Razor Clam has a few live shows coming up. They play the Cunning Crow Witches Ball at Substation on Saturday, November 3rd, The Valley in Tacoma on Friday, December 7th, and Capitol Hills Barbosa on Friday, December 14th.
Hi, my name is BenDeLaCreme, and I am super excited to be curating this spooktacular calendar of events. Let's venture back in time a bit to the silent movie era for STG's Silent Movie Monday Halloween special screening of the 1927 film The Cat and the Canary. This film, directed by Paul Lenny, launched to the haunted house horror comedy genre. Its direction makes you feel like you're moving through the film's haunted house along with the characters. Check it out Monday, October 29th at 7 p.m. Animals can be scary, right? But the Woodland Park Zoo's brood is mainly all cute. This year, the animals are celebrating the #1 seasonal gourd, pumpkins, for their annual Pumpkin Bash. Check out all the furry, feathery, and scaly fun the weekend of October 27th and 28th. Hotel Sorrento is celebrating the season with the dark, the weird, and the whimsical. Inside the famous fireside room, experience Sorrento Curiosities 2018, with weekly events such as Tarot Card Tuesdays, Noir at the Bar, Tales of Crime Fiction, and learn about the paranormal and afterlife with Neil McNeil, an expert in the field. Visit hotelsorrento.com for all the dates and times. And speaking of the paranormal, I am excited to tell you about my show, Beware the Terror of Gaylord Manor, playing currently in partnership with Act Lab at Act Theater. Enter and discover what happens when an unwitting ingenue and two paranormal researchers find themselves trapped inside a house filled with a menagerie of devious characters on Halloween night. From vampire vixens to mischievous mummies and witches that work, you never know what's lurking around the next corner. Playing now through All Hallows Eve.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, before wrapping up, we want to give a shout out to Teatro Zinzanni in their new world headquarters. That's right, the Big Tent has dropped anchor in Woodinville, taken over the former Red Hook Brewery, and their entire operation, including a circus arts training studio, is now housed on 17 glorious acres. Teatro's first show in the new digs is called Hollywood and Vine. It opens November 1st, and you can snag tickets at zinzanni.com. And that does it for us. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you soon.